The dust swirled across the wooden platform as the train screeched to a halt at Silver Creek Station, Montana Territory, 1885. Olivia Vaughan clutched her worn leather satchel with trembling hands, her heart hammering against her ribs as she stepped down from the passenger car. She was the only bride who disembarked, though the advertisement had promised multiple women would be making the journey west to meet prospective husbands. One by one, the other mail-order brides had abandoned the trip at earlier stops, their courage failing as tales of the harsh frontier life grew more frightening with each passing mile. The small mining town sprawled before her, a collection of weathered buildings beneath a vast Montana sky. Olivia smoothed the wrinkles from her blue traveling dress, fighting the urge to climb back aboard the train and return to Boston. There was nothing left for her there, not since her parents' passing had left her with mounting debts and no prospects. She scanned the faces of those waiting on the platform, searching for the man whose letters had given her hope. Instead, her gaze landed on a tall figure leaning against a hitching post, his features partially obscured by the shadow cast from his wide-brimmed hat. Unlike the other townspeople dressed in their Sunday best to greet the newcomers, he wore dusty trail clothes and a gun belt slung low on his hips. As the train pulled away behind her, taking with it her last connection to the life she once knew, the man pushed away from the post and approached. His eyes, a startling shade of blue against his sun-bronzed skin, studied her with unexpected warmth. "Miss Vaughan," he asked, his voice deep and rough like the mountains surrounding them. Olivia nodded, unable to find her voice. A smile broke across his rugged face, transforming it entirely. "Yance O'Malley," he said, extending a calloused hand. "You've been waiting for me." Olivia stared at him in confusion. "I believe, sir, it is I who has been waiting for you." Yance laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "That's not how I see it, Miss Vaughan. I've been waiting my whole life for someone like you to arrive." The unexpected poetry in his words caught her off guard, but before she could respond, a gust of wind snatched her bonnet. It tumbled across the platform, and Yance moved with surprising grace, catching it before it could disappear beneath the train's wheels. When he returned and placed it gently in her hands, their fingers brushed, and Olivia felt a peculiar warmth spread through her chest. This was not the man whose letters she had received. Those had been signed Frederick Winters, but something in his steady gaze made her hesitate to point out the mistake. "I believe there's been some confusion," she finally said. "I'm here to meet Mr. Frederick Winters." The smile faded from Yance's face, replaced by a grimace. "I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news about that, Miss Vaughan. Perhaps we should discuss it somewhere less public." Olivia's stomach tightened with apprehension as she noticed the curious stares from other passengers and townspeople. She nodded stiffly and allowed him to take her bag, following him across the dusty street to a modest cafe. The aroma of fresh coffee and baking bread enveloped them as they entered. A plump woman with graying hair greeted them with a smile that dimmed slightly when she saw Olivia. "Mornin', Yance." "This must be." The woman's voice trailed off as she glanced between them. "Mrs. Peterson, this is Miss Olivia Vaughan," Yance said. "She's just arrived from Boston. Might we have some coffee and privacy?" Mrs. Peterson nodded, ushering them to a corner table before bustling away. Once they were seated, Yance removed his hat, revealing tousled dark hair streaked with sun-bleached strands. "I don't know exactly how to tell you this, Miss Vaughan, but Frederick Winters passed away 3 weeks ago. Influenza took him fast." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. She had exchanged letters with Frederick for 6 months, and while she hadn't harbored romantic notions about their arrangement, the news of his death left her adrift. She had traveled over 2,000 miles to marry a man she'd never met, and now she was alone in unfamiliar territory with no prospects and limited funds. "I see," she managed to say, her voice barely audible. "Mrs. Peterson returned with coffee and slices of apple pie, placing them on the table before retreating with a sympathetic glance. "Frederick was my business partner," Yance continued. "We owned the Silver Creek Ranch together. He asked me to meet you should anything happen to him." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I know this isn't what you expected, and I'll arrange passage back east if that's your wish." Olivia stared into her coffee cup, weighing her options. Return to Boston with no home and no future, or remain in this untamed land with even less certainty. What would happen if I stayed? She asked, surprising herself with the question. Yance's eyebrows rose. Well, there's plenty of work for educated women in town. The schoolmistress is looking to retire, and Doc Wilson's wife has been searching for someone to help with the apothecary. I was promised a marriage, Mr. O'Malley, not employment. A flush crept up Yance's neck. I'm not proposing marriage, Miss Vaughan. We've only just met. I didn't mean with you, Olivia said quickly, her own cheeks warming. I simply meant that my purpose in coming here was to establish a home and family. Employment alone wasn't my intention. Yance nodded slowly. There are several unmarried men of good character in Silver Creek who would consider themselves fortunate to have a wife like you. Once you're settled, introductions could be arranged. The thought of being passed from one prospective husband to another made Olivia's stomach turn. She had already endured the humiliation of advertising herself as a mail-order bride. She wouldn't become a charity case to be handed off to the first willing bachelor. I appreciate your concern, Mr. O'Malley, but I prefer to make my own way. She took a sip of coffee, gathering her courage. You mentioned the school needs a teacher. Yes, Mrs. Hollister is nearly 70. She's been teaching here since Silver Creek was nothing more than a few tents and a saloon. I was a teacher's assistant in Boston for 3 years before my parents fell ill. I believe I could fill that position adequately. Yance studied her for a long moment, and Olivia fought the urge to fidget under his scrutiny. There was something disarming about his gaze, as if he could see beyond the careful facade she had constructed. The position doesn't pay much, he warned. And you'll need a place to stay. I have some savings, Olivia said, though the amount was pitifully small after purchasing her train ticket and trousseau. Yance seemed to read her thoughts. There's a boarding house for unmarried women run by Widow Clark. It's respectable and affordable. Mrs. Peterson returned to refill their cups. Begging your pardon, but I couldn't help overhearing. The Clark house is full up with the miners' daughters who came for summer schooling. Olivia's heart sank. She had not anticipated this complication. Miss Vaughan could stay at Frederick's house, Yance suggested after a moment of thought. It's sitting empty and it's rightfully hers anyway. Mine, Olivia asked in confusion. Frederick named you in his will. He left you the house in town and a small parcel of land. It's not much, but it's something. Olivia set down her cup, stunned by this revelation. He left property to a woman he'd never met, Yance shrugged. Frederick was an unusual man. He believed in planning for every contingency. He said if you were willing to travel across the country to marry him, the least he could do was ensure you'd have a roof over your head. The unexpected kindness from a stranger brought tears to Olivia's eyes. She blinked them away, unwilling to show weakness in her precarious position. If that's settled, Yance said, rising from his chair, I'll take you to the house. It's been closed up for a while, but it's sound. We can see about the teaching position tomorrow. As they stepped back onto the street, the reality of Olivia's situation struck her anew. She had arrived expecting to become a wife, and instead found herself a property owner and potential schoolteacher in a town where she knew no one. Yance led her down the main street, past the general store, the assayer's office, and the Silver Creek saloon. Men paused in their activities to watch them pass, their gazes lingering on Olivia with undisguised curiosity. Don't mind them, Yance murmured. New faces are rare enough, but a beautiful woman arriving alone is cause for gossip. Olivia chose to ignore the compliment, focusing instead on the buildings they passed. Silver Creek was larger than she had expected, with established businesses and homes that spoke of permanence rather than the transient nature of many mining towns. They turned onto a side street lined with modest houses, each with a small garden plot. Yance stopped in front of a white clapboard house with green shutters and a covered porch. This is it, he said, producing a key from his pocket. It's not fancy, but it's solid. Frederick built it himself 5 years ago. Olivia followed him up the short path to the porch, noticing the neglected flower beds that had once been carefully tended. The house was small but charming, with windows on either side of the front door. Yance unlocked the door and stepped back to allow her entry. The interior was dim, with sheets covering the furniture. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light filtering through the closed curtains. "It needs airing out," Yance said, moving to open the windows. "And a good cleaning, but the roof doesn't leak and the stove works well." Olivia moved through the front room to the kitchen, taking in the simple furnishings. A narrow staircase led to what she presumed was a bedroom above. It was more spacious than she had expected, certainly larger than the cramped apartment she had shared with her parents in Boston. "Why did Mr. Winters live in town rather than at the ranch?" she asked as Yance pulled sheets from the furniture, revealing a comfortable settee and 2 armchairs. "He preferred it, said a man should have a proper home separate from his business." Yance's expression grew distant. "Frederick was raised back east. He never quite shed those sensibilities even after 20 years out here." "And you, where do you live?" "At the ranch." "It's about 5 miles outside town." He moved to the kitchen and pumped water into the sink, testing that it flowed clearly. "I'm more comfortable there than in town. Too many people, too much noise." Olivia tried to imagine the bustling Silver Creek as noisy compared to Boston's crowded streets and found she couldn't. "How large is the ranch?" 800 acres, give or take. Mostly cattle, some horses. It's not the biggest spread in the territory, but it's prosperous enough. The casual way he spoke of such vast holdings reminded Olivia how different this world was from the one she had left behind. In Boston, a man who owned even a fraction of that land would be considered extremely wealthy. "I'll bring your trunk from the station," Yance said, heading toward the door. "There's a pump in the back for water, and I'll have Mrs. Peterson send over some supplies to get you through tonight. Tomorrow we can see about stocking the pantry properly." "You've been very kind, Mr. O'Malley," Olivia said, following him to the porch. "I don't know how to thank you." Yance paused, studying her with that unsettling directness. "There's no need for thanks. I made a promise to Frederick to look after you, and I keep my promises." After Yance departed, Olivia stood on the porch, watching as he strode back toward the center of town. His tall figure moved with an easy confidence that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. With a sigh, she turned back to her house and set about making it habitable. By the time Yance returned with her trunk and a basket of supplies for Mrs. Peterson, she had swept the downstairs rooms and removed the dusty sheets from the furniture. "You've been busy," he observed, setting the heavy trunk in the front room. "Idle hands invite the devil's work, or so my mother always said." Olivia opened the basket to find bread, cheese, preserves, and a small container of butter. "Please thank Mrs. Peterson for her generosity." She included directions for getting to the church tomorrow. Service starts at 10. Yance stood awkwardly in the doorway, as if uncertain whether to leave or stay. "I'll come by after breakfast to escort you if you'd like." Olivia hesitated. She had attended church regularly in Boston, finding comfort in the familiar rituals, but she hadn't considered how she would establish herself socially in Silver Creek. "That would be very helpful, thank you." Yance nodded, settling his hat back on his head. "Then I'll bid you good night, Miss Vaughan. Lock your door after I leave." After he departed, Olivia secured the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. The events of the day had left her emotionally drained. She had arrived expecting to meet her future husband, and instead found herself alone in a stranger's house, in a town where she knew no one except a rugged rancher who felt obligated to help her. She climbed the narrow stairs to explore the upper floor, finding a bedroom with a brass bed frame and a smaller room that might serve as a study or sewing room. The bedroom window offered a view of the mountains in the distance, their peaks still capped with snow despite the summer heat. After washing with water from the kitchen pump, Olivia changed into her nightgown and slipped between the sheets of the unfamiliar bed. As she drifted toward sleep, her thoughts returned to Yance O'Malley with his direct blue eyes and unexpected kindness. "You've been waiting for me," he had said. The words had seemed strange at the time, but as sleep claimed her, she wondered if perhaps they held a truth she wasn't yet ready to acknowledge. Morning brought clarity and renewed purpose. Olivia rose with the sun, grateful for the familiar routine of washing and dressing. She had brought only 3 good dresses with her, saving her finest a pale yellow muslin with ivory lace trim for her first Sunday in her new home. After a simple breakfast of bread and preserves, she heard a knock at the front door. Yance stood on the porch, looking transformed. Gone were the dusty trail clothes, replaced by a dark suit and polished boots. His hair was neatly combed, and he had shaved, revealing a strong jaw and the faint scar that ran along his left cheekbone. "Good morning, Miss Vaughan," he said, his voice warm with appreciation as he took in her appearance. "You look lovely." "Thank you, Mr. O'Malley, you clean up quite well yourself." A smile tugged at his mouth. "Don't sound so surprised, even cowboys attend church occasionally." As they walked toward the white steeple visible above the town's rooftops, Olivia was keenly aware of the glances they attracted. Women paused in their conversations to watch them pass, while men nodded respectfully to Yance, their curious gazes lingering on Olivia. "I feel like a curiosity in a traveling show," she murmured. "News travels fast in small towns," Yance replied. "By now, everyone knows Frederick's mail-order bride arrived yesterday only to find her intended groom deceased. They're wondering what happens next." "What does happen next?" Olivia asked, more to herself than to him. Yance's expression grew serious. "That depends on you, Miss Vaughan. Silver Creek can be a good place to build a life if you're willing to accept its limitations. It's not Boston, but it has its own kind of beauty." Before she could respond, they reached the church steps where a balding man in clerical attire greeted them with a benevolent smile. "Yance, good to see you, and this must be Miss Vaughan. I'm Reverend Thomas." He extended his hand to Olivia. "Welcome to Silver Creek. We're deeply sorry about Frederick's passing. He was a valued member of our congregation." "Thank you, Reverend," Olivia said, taking his offered hand. "I regret that I never had the opportunity to meet him." The Reverend's wife, a slender woman with kind eyes, joined them. "Mrs. Hollister mentioned you might be interested in the teaching position," she said after introductions were made. "I serve on the school board. Perhaps we could discuss it after the service." Olivia agreed readily, grateful for the potential opportunity. As they entered the church, Yance guided her to a pew near the front, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. The casual touch sent an unexpected shiver up her spine. Throughout the service, Olivia was acutely aware of Yance beside her. His deep voice joined in the hymns with surprising confidence, and when their hands accidentally brushed as they shared a hymnal, she felt that same peculiar warmth she had experienced on the train platform. After the final prayer, Mrs. Thomas approached them, accompanied by an elderly woman leaning heavily on a cane. "Miss Vaughan, this is Mrs. Hollister, our schoolteacher," Mrs. Thomas said. "She's eager to meet you." Mrs. Hollister's roomy eyes studied Olivia with sharp intelligence. "Heard you were a teacher back east," she said without preamble. "What subjects?" "Reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and basic sciences," Olivia replied. "I also taught needlework and music when required." The old woman nodded approvingly. "Good, good. Can you start tomorrow?" "These old bones can't manage another term, and the children need learning." Startled by the abruptness of the offer, Olivia glanced at Mrs. Thomas, who smiled encouragingly. "The school board has reviewed your credentials from the letters you sent to Frederick," she explained. "We're satisfied that you're qualified for the position." "I would be honored to accept," Olivia said, her heart lightening at the prospect of meaningful work. "Thank you for this opportunity." As they left the church, townspeople approached to introduce themselves. Olivia met the town doctor and his wife, the owners of the general store, and numerous ranch families whose children would be her pupils. By the time they started back toward her house, her head was spinning with names and connections. "Overwhelming, isn't it?" Yance asked as they walked. "A bit," Olivia admitted. "Everyone has been very welcoming, though. Silver Creek folk are good people for the most part. They look after their own." He paused, glancing at her. "Would you care to join me for dinner at the hotel restaurant? It's the best food in town, and it might be easier than cooking after your first day here." The invitation surprised her, but Olivia found herself nodding. "That would be lovely, thank you." The hotel dining room was more elegant than she had expected, with linen-covered tables and a small vase of wildflowers at each setting. The other diners greeted Yance with respect, their curious gazes following Olivia as they were seated at a corner table. "You're well regarded here," Olivia observed after they had ordered. Yance shrugged, seeming uncomfortable with the observation. "I've lived here 15 years, people know me. And yet you prefer your ranch to town." A smile touched his lips. "You're observant, Miss Vaughan." "Olivia," she said impulsively, "if we're to be friends, you might as well use my given name." "Olivia," he repeated, the name sounding different in his deep voice. "And I'm Yance, not Mr. O'Malley. Mr. O'Malley was my father, and I'm nothing like him." There was an edge to his voice that hinted at an old wound. Olivia didn't press, instead asking about the ranch and his business partnership with Frederick. As they ate, Yance described how he had arrived in Silver Creek as a young man with little more than a horse and a dream. Frederick, already established as a successful rancher, had seen potential in the hard-working cowboy and offered him a job. Over time, that position had evolved into a partnership. "Frederick never married?" Olivia asked, curious about the man who had brought her to this place. "No. He had a sweetheart back in Philadelphia, but she chose another man with more prospects." Yance's expression grew distant. "He never got over her, not really. I think that's why he decided to advertise for a bride. He was tired of being alone." The poignancy of Frederick's situation struck Olivia deeply. She understood the loneliness that had driven him to seek companionship through such unconventional means. It was the same loneliness that had compelled her to answer his advertisement. "And you?" she asked softly. "Have you never thought of marriage?" Yance's blue eyes met hers, their intensity making her breath catch. "I've thought of it, but ranching is hard work and most women aren't suited to that life. It didn't seem fair to ask." "Perhaps you should let the women decide what they're suited for," Olivia suggested. A slow smile spread across his face. "Perhaps I should." The week that followed established a routine that brought comfort to Olivia's uncertain situation. Each morning, she walked to the schoolhouse where 15 children of varying ages awaited her instruction. Mrs. Hollister attended the first day to introduce her, then happily retired to tend her garden and read the books she had neglected during her teaching years. Olivia found she enjoyed teaching more than she had in Boston. The Silver Creek children were eager to learn, and without the strict supervision of a headmaster, she could adapt her lessons to engage their interests. She taught reading using stories of frontier heroes, practiced arithmetic by calculating cattle herd sizes, and incorporated local history into her lessons. In the evenings, she settled into Frederick's house, gradually making it her own. She planted marigolds and zinnias in the neglected flower beds and hung curtains she had sewn from fabric purchased at the general store. The front room bookshelf, previously filled with Frederick's law books and agricultural journals, now included her treasured novels and poetry collections. Yance visited regularly, sometimes bringing fresh vegetables from the ranch garden or a haunch of venison from a successful hunt. He helped repair a loose shutter, fixed the squeaky front gate, and built shelves in the kitchen pantry. Each visit extended longer than the last, their conversations flowing easily from school matters to books they had both read to childhood memories. On Saturday, a week after her arrival, Yance appeared at her door with an unexpected proposition. "I thought you might like to see the ranch," he said, a hint of nervousness in his usually confident demeanor. "It's a pleasant day for a ride." Olivia hesitated. While she had grown comfortable in Yance's company, visiting his home seemed to cross an invisible boundary. Yet curiosity won out over propriety. "I would like that," she said, "though I should warn you it's been years since I rode a horse." Yance's relief was palpable. "Don't worry, old Daisy is gentle as a lamb, she'll take good care of you." They set out shortly after breakfast. Olivia perched atop a placid dun mare while Yance rode a spirited black gelding. The trail wound through pine forests and open meadows vibrant with late summer wildflowers. As they crested a rise, Yance reined in his horse and gestured to the valley below. "Silver Creek Ranch," he said, a note of pride in his voice. The valley sprawled before them, a patchwork of green pastures where cattle grazed in the distance. A cluster of buildings, a large barn, corrals, bunkhouse, and a two-story log home nestled against the backdrop of towering mountains. "It's beautiful," Olivia said, genuinely impressed by the scope and setting of the ranch. "It's home," Yance replied simply. As they rode down into the valley, ranch hands paused in their work to wave or call greetings. Yance introduced her to each man they passed, and Olivia noticed the respect with which they treated their employer. At the ranch house, a middle-aged woman emerged from the kitchen door, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron. "Mrs. Beecham, this is Miss Olivia Vaughan," Yance said as he helped Olivia dismount. "Olivia, Mrs. Beecham keeps me and the ranch hands fed and civilized." Mrs. Beecham studied Olivia with undisguised curiosity. "So you're the lady teacher everyone's talking about. Welcome to Silver Creek Ranch." Inside, the ranch house revealed Yance's character more clearly than any conversation could have. The furnishings were solid and well-crafted, chosen for comfort rather than show. Bookshelves lined one wall of the sitting room, filled with volumes on ranching, Western history, and surprisingly, poetry and classic literature. "You read Tennyson?" Olivia asked, running her finger along the leather spine of a volume. Yance nodded, a faint flush coloring his cheeks. "Frederick insisted I educate myself, said a man should know more than just cattle and horses. He sounds like he was a good friend, the best." Yance's voice roughened with emotion. "He believed in me when no one else did, including myself, Mrs. Beecham served lunch on the wide porch, cold chicken, biscuits, preserves, and apple pie still warm from the oven. As they ate, Yance pointed out features of the ranch, describing his plans for expanding the herd and adding a new grazing area in the eastern valley. "You've built something remarkable here," Olivia said when he paused. "We built it," Yance corrected. "Frederick and I, and now it's just me." There was no self-pity in his tone, merely a statement of fact. "It's a lot for one man to manage. Couldn't you hire a manager to help?" Yance shook his head. "It's not just about the work, it's—" He paused, searching for words. "Ranching isn't just a business, it's a way of life. You have to love it to understand it in your bones." After lunch, he showed her the rest of the ranch, the barn where a new foal tottered on spindly legs beside its mother, the blacksmith shop where a ranch hand crafted specialized tools, the spring-fed creek that gave the ranch its name. As the afternoon waned, they rode to a ridge overlooking the valley. Dismounting, they sat on a sun-warmed boulder, the vast Montana sky stretching endlessly above them. "I can see why you love it here," Olivia said, breathing in the scent of pine and sage. "There's a freedom to it that's intoxicating." Yance looked at her with surprise. "Most women find it isolating." "I suppose I'm not most women." "No," he agreed softly, "you're not." The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Olivia found herself studying his profile, the straight nose, the strong jawline, the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes that deepened when he smiled. In the week she had known him, Yance O'Malley had become important to her in ways she hadn't anticipated. The sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "We should head back," Yance said reluctantly. "It'll be dark soon." As they rode back to town, Olivia pondered the day's revelations. She had come to Silver Creek expecting to marry a man she had never met, to build a life based on practicality rather than passion. Instead, she found herself drawn to a man who represented everything she had never known. She wanted strength tempered with kindness, confidence without arrogance, and a deep appreciation for the beauty of the land he had claimed as his own. The following days brought a shift in their relationship. Yance's visits to her house became a daily occurrence, usually bearing some small gift, fresh eggs, a bouquet of wildflowers, a book he thought she might enjoy. For her part, Olivia found herself watching the clock as school ended, anticipation building for his arrival. The townspeople noticed. Mrs. Peterson commented on how often Yance's horse was tied outside Olivia's gate. Mrs. Thomas remarked on the way Yance's eyes followed Olivia at church services. Even the schoolchildren teased her about Mr. O'Malley's special smile that seemed reserved just for their teacher. Yet neither Olivia nor Yance acknowledged the growing attraction between them. They maintained a careful friendship, their conversations ranging from school matters to ranch business to books they had both read. If their hands occasionally brushed when passing a dish or turning a page, if their gazes held a moment longer than necessary, neither mentioned it. The situation might have continued indefinitely if not for the arrival of Terrence Blackwell, a cattle buyer from Chicago who came to Silver Creek in early October. Olivia first encountered him at the general store where she was purchasing supplies for a school project. Tall and fashionably dressed, with carefully pomaded hair and a waxed mustache, he stood out among the roughly clothed miners and ranchers. "Pardon me, miss," he said, reaching past her for a box of cigars. "I couldn't help noticing you seem different from the other ladies in this charming hamlet." His patronizing tone grated on Olivia's nerves, but she maintained her composure. "I'm relatively new to Silver Creek," she replied politely. "Ah, that explains it." He offered an elaborate bow. "Terrence Blackwell at your service. I'm here on business from Chicago. Olivia Vaughan." "I'm the schoolteacher." His eyebrows rose. "A schoolteacher? With your beauty and refinement, I would have expected you to be married to one of these fortunate frontier gentlemen." Before Olivia could respond to this presumption, the bell above the door jingled and Yance entered. His easy smile faded when he saw Blackwell standing close to Olivia. "Yance," Olivia said, relief evident in her voice. Mr. Blackwell was just introducing himself. Yance nodded curtly to the other man. "Blackwell, I didn't expect to see you in town so soon." "I concluded my business at the Hawkins spread earlier than anticipated," Blackwell replied smoothly. "I was just making the acquaintance of your charming schoolteacher." "Miss Vaughan has been a welcome addition to our community," Yance said, his tone carefully neutral. "Indeed." "I was just remarking to Miss Vaughan that a woman of her quality seems wasted in such a rustic setting." Blackwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. Chicago society would embrace someone of her refinement. Olivia saw Yance's jaw tighten, the only outward sign of his irritation. "I'm sure Miss Vaughan can decide for herself where she belongs," he said evenly. Of course. Blackwell turned back to Olivia with a calculated smile. "Perhaps you would honor me by joining me for dinner at the hotel this evening. I could tell you about the cultural opportunities Chicago offers." Caught off guard by the invitation and aware of Yance's tense presence beside her, Olivia hesitated. "That's very kind, Mr. Blackwell, but I'm afraid I have papers to grade this evening. Another time, perhaps. I'll be in Silver Creek for several days." With a tip of his hat to Olivia and a curt nod to Yance, Blackwell paid for his cigars and departed. An awkward silence fell between Olivia and Yance as they completed their purchases. Outside the store, Yance finally spoke, his voice carefully casual. "Blackwell's been trying to buy cattle from area ranchers for the Chicago market, he seems." Olivia searched for a diplomatic description. "Arrogant, condescending, too smooth by half," Yance suggested, a hint of humor returning to his eyes. Olivia laughed, tension easing from her shoulders. "All of the above. Though I must admit, it's refreshing to be reminded that not all men out here are as straightforward as you." "Is that what I am? Straightforward, among other things." She smiled up at him, enjoying the way sunlight caught in his dark hair. "Were you looking for me, or was our meeting coincidental?" "I was looking for you," he admitted. "I wanted to invite you to dinner at the ranch tomorrow. Mrs. Beecham is making her famous pot roast, and she specifically requested your company." "Did she now?" Olivia teased, suspecting Mrs. Beecham had done no such thing. "Well, I wouldn't want to disappoint Mrs. Beecham." Yance's smile warmed his entire face. "I'll pick you up after school lets out." As promised, Yance arrived at the schoolhouse the following afternoon, his wagon freshly washed and a blanket laid across the seat for comfort. The children giggled and whispered as he helped Olivia into the wagon, their young faces alight with romantic speculation. The ride to the ranch passed pleasantly, with Yance pointing out the changing autumn colors in the aspens that dotted the hillsides. At the ranch, Mrs. Beecham greeted them warmly, ushering them into the sitting room where a fire crackled in the stone hearth. "It's good to see you again, Miss Vaughan," she said, serving coffee. "The boss has been in a much better mood since you came to town." "Mrs. Beecham," Yance protested, a flush creeping up his neck. The housekeeper merely smiled and returned to the kitchen, leaving an amused Olivia and embarrassed Yance alone. "Don't mind her," Yance said. "She's decided it's her mission to see me settled." "And what do you think about that mission?" Olivia asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Yance's blue eyes met hers, their intensity making her breath catch. "I think," he said slowly, "that some missions are worth undertaking when the time and circumstances are right." Before Olivia could respond to this veiled statement, Mrs. Beauchamp announced that dinner was ready. The meal was delicious pot roast so tender it fell apart at the touch of a fork, vegetables from the ranch garden, fresh bread still warm from the oven, and apple cobbler with thick cream for dessert. After dinner, Yance suggested a walk to help settle their meal. The evening air was crisp with approaching winter, the sky a deepening blue scattered with emerging stars. They walked toward the creek, a comfortable silence between them. At the water's edge, Yance paused, his expression thoughtful as he gazed at the rippling surface. "I came here my first day on the ranch," he said. "I was 19, had never worked cattle before. Frederick hired me anyway, said he saw potential." He smiled at the memory. "I was so overwhelmed that first day, new skills to learn, new men to prove myself to. I came down here at sunset and sat on that rock, wondering if I'd made a mistake." Olivia could picture it easily, a younger Yance, less confident but with the same determination in his blue eyes. "What made you stay?" "The sunset," he said simply. "The way the mountains turned gold, then purple, then blue. The way the creek caught the last light and held it. I decided any place this beautiful was worth the struggle to belong." His words resonated with Olivia's own experience of coming to Silver Creek. She too had questioned her decision, had wondered if she belonged in this wild place so different from her Boston upbringing. "I understand," she said softly. "When I arrived and found Frederick had died, I almost got back on the train. But then I saw the mountains and the way the light falls across the valley, and I thought perhaps I could find a place here." "Have you?" Yance asked, his voice low. "Found your place?" Olivia considered the question, thinking of her small house in town, the schoolchildren who greeted her each morning with enthusiasm, the community that had welcomed her despite her unusual arrival. "I believe I have," she said. "It's not the place I expected to find, but perhaps it's better for that." Yance took a step closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him in the cool evening air. "Olivia," he began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "Yes," she prompted, her heart quickening. Before he could continue, a ranch hand approached, apologizing for the interruption. "Boss, there's trouble with the new bull. He's broken through the corral fence and is heading for the north pasture where the pregnant heifers are grazing." Yance's expression shifted immediately from tender to focused. "I'll be right there." To Olivia, he said, "I'm sorry, this could take some time. Would you mind if Mrs. Beauchamp drove you back to town?" Disappointment washed through her, but Olivia nodded her understanding. "Of course. Go do what you need to." He hesitated, then quickly pressed his lips to her forehead. "We'll continue this conversation another time," he promised before striding away with the ranch hand. The interrupted moment at the creek marked a turning point. Over the next week, Yance's visits to Olivia's house continued, but there was a new tension between them, an awareness of words left unspoken and feelings unexplored. Their situation was complicated by Terrence Blackwell's persistent attention toward Olivia. The cattle buyer extended his stay in Silver Creek, finding excuses to visit the school or intercept Olivia on her walks through town. His invitations to dinner became more frequent, his compliments more effusive. "You're wasted in this backwater, Miss Vaughan," he told her as he walked her home from school one afternoon. "A woman of your beauty and intelligence belongs in civilization, not teaching multiplication to minors' children." "I find my work very fulfilling, Mr. Blackwell," Olivia replied coolly, "and Silver Creek has many admirable qualities." "Such as," he challenged, "the mud streets, the limited society, the absence of cultural refinements, the honesty of its people," she countered. "The strength of its community, the beauty of the land," Blackwell scoffed. "Pretty scenery doesn't make up for the hardships of frontier life. You deserve better." I believe I am capable of determining what I deserve, Mr. Blackwell. His persistence might have been merely annoying if not for the effect it had on Yance. Each time he encountered Blackwell speaking with Olivia, his jaw tightened and his manner grew increasingly reserved. When Olivia mentioned that Blackwell had invited her to the town's harvest dance, something dark flickered in Yance's eyes. "He's leaving for Chicago next week," Yance said curtly. "He's made offers on cattle from every ranch in the county." "Including yours?" Olivia asked. "Yes." His price was fair. Business is business. The coolness in his tone confused Olivia. "Have I done something to upset you, Yance?" he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "No, of course not. Blackwell isn't what he seems. I don't trust him." "I appreciate your concern, but I'm capable of judging a man's character for myself." "Are you?" Yance asked, an edge to his voice. "You agreed to marry a man you'd never met based on a few letters." The reminder stung, and Olivia drew herself up stiffly. "That was a practical decision made out of necessity. I never claimed it was ideal." Yance's expression softened. "I'm sorry, that was unfair of me. It's just—" He paused, visibly struggling with his words. "Blackwell reminds me of men I knew back east. Men who see the West as something to exploit and discard." Understanding dawned on Olivia. "You think he sees me the same way?" "I think he sees a beautiful, educated woman who could be an asset to him in Chicago society. I don't think he sees you." The simple truth of his assessment touched Olivia deeply. Yance might not have declared his feelings in so many words, but in that moment, she knew with certainty that he cared for her as more than a friend or a responsibility inherited from Frederick. "Will you be attending the harvest dance?" she asked, deliberately changing the subject. "I hadn't planned to," he admitted. "I wish you would," Olivia said softly. "I'd like to dance with you." The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. "In that case, I'll be there." The harvest dance, held in the town hall the Saturday before Thanksgiving, was Silver Creek's largest social event of the year. Farmers and ranchers from miles around gathered to celebrate the end of the growing season before winter closed the mountain passes. Olivia spent more time than she would admit selecting her dress for the occasion, a deep blue silk that had been part of her trousseau, intended for formal dinners with Frederick. The bodice was modestly cut, but fitted to emphasize her slender waist, the skirt falling in graceful folds to the floor. As she pinned her hair up, leaving a few curls to frame her face, Olivia acknowledged to herself what she had been avoiding for weeks. She had feelings for Yance O'Malley that went far beyond friendship or gratitude. Somewhere between their first meeting on the train platform and their quiet conversations by her hearth, she had fallen in love with him. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had come to Silver Creek expecting a marriage of convenience, a practical partnership with a man she might learn to care for over time. Instead, she had found a man who stirred her heart from the first moment he said, "You've been waiting for me." A knock at her door pulled her from these reflections. Expecting to find Yance, she was surprised to see Terrence Blackwell on her porch, resplendent in an evening suit that would have been appropriate for a Boston theater, but seemed ostentatious in Silver Creek. "Miss Vaughan," he said, his eyes appreciative as they took in her appearance, "you look absolutely enchanting. I've come to escort you to the dance." "That's very kind, Mr. Blackwell, but I wasn't expecting you." Olivia hesitated, unwilling to be rude but equally unwilling to arrive at the dance on his arm. "I took the liberty of assuming you would welcome an escort," he said smoothly. "A lady of your standing shouldn't walk alone." Before Olivia could formulate a polite refusal, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. Yance rode up to her gate, dismounting in one fluid motion. He wore a clean black suit and white shirt, his dark hair neatly combed, and Olivia's breath caught at the sight of him. "Olivia," he said, his gaze moving from her to Blackwell with a flicker of surprise. "I hope I'm not late." "Not at all," she replied, relief evident in her voice. "Mr. Blackwell was just leaving." The cattle buyer's expression hardened briefly before he forced a smile. "I see I've been preempted. Another time, perhaps." With a stiff nod to Yance, he turned and walked back toward the hotel. When he was out of earshot, Yance stepped closer, his eyes warm as they took in Olivia's appearance. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." She felt a blush rise to her cheeks under his admiring gaze. "You look quite handsome yourself." The town hall was transformed for the harvest dance. Corn shocks and pumpkins decorated the corners, paper lanterns hung from the rafters, and a small band of local musicians played lively tunes on fiddles, guitar, and piano. As Olivia and Yance entered, conversations paused momentarily as people turned to look at them. Olivia heard whispers, some speculative, some approving, before the music swelled and attention returned to the dance floor. "It seems we've caused a stir," she murmured to Yance. "Small town curiosity," he replied, though she noticed a hint of color on his cheeks. "Would you care to dance?" The band was playing a waltz, and as Yance led her onto the floor, his hand warm at her waist, Olivia was surprised by his skill. He guided her through the steps with easy confidence, their movements in perfect harmony. "You dance very well," she said, looking up at him with new appreciation. "Where did you learn?" Frederick insisted. "I learned proper etiquette," Yance explained. Said a business partner of his shouldn't embarrass him at social gatherings. "Mrs. Peterson taught me in her kitchen, using a broom as a partner." The image made Olivia laugh, and Yance's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled down at her. "I'd rather dance with you than a broom any day," he added softly. They danced 3 more sets before taking a break for refreshments. As Yance fetched punch, Olivia found herself surrounded by several town matrons eager for conversation. "You and Mr. O'Malley make a handsome couple," Mrs. Thomas said approvingly. "He's never brought anyone to the harvest dance before." "We're just friends," Olivia protested weakly. "Mrs. Peterson snorted. "That's not how friends look at each other, my dear. That man's been smitten since you stepped off the train." Before Olivia could respond to this startling assessment, Yance returned with their punch. The women dispersed with knowing smiles, leaving Olivia flustered and Yance puzzled. "What was that about?" he asked. "Nothing important," Olivia said quickly. "Just town gossip." As the evening progressed, they danced several more times, talked with friends and neighbors, and gradually moved closer to each other, both physically and emotionally. Yance's hand found hers during a lull in the music, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. They might have continued in this pleasant haze indefinitely if Terence Blackwell hadn't appeared at Olivia's elbow during a break between dances. "Miss Vaughan," he said, his tone overly familiar, "I believe you promised me a dance." "I don't recall making such a promise, Mr. Blackwell," Olivia replied coolly. "Come now, don't be coy." He reached for her hand. "Just one dance." Yance stepped forward, his expression hardening. "The lady declined, Blackwell." The cattle buyer's face flushed with anger. "I wasn't speaking to you, Cowboy. This is between me and the lady, Mr. Blackwell," Olivia interjected, keeping her voice calm despite her rising indignation. "I have no wish to dance with you. Please respect my decision." "You'd rather stay with this ranch hand," Blackwell sneered. "A man who wouldn't be accepted in any decent drawing room back east. I'm offering you a chance at a real life, Olivia. Don't throw it away for some frontier romance that will fade as quickly as summer flowers in the first frost." Yance's hands clenched at his sides, but his voice remained steady. "I think you should leave, Blackwell, before this becomes more than a disagreement." The threat in his tone was unmistakable. Blackwell looked from Yance's hard expression to Olivia's resolute face and finally stepped back. "You're making a mistake, Miss Vaughan," he said stiffly. "When you tire of playing frontier schoolmarm, my offer remains open." With a curt nod, he turned and pushed through the crowd toward the exit. A tense silence followed his departure. Olivia was acutely aware of the curious glances from nearby dancers, the whispers behind raised hands. "Perhaps we should go," she suggested quietly to Yance. He nodded, his expression still grim as he guided her toward the door, his hand protectively at the small of her back. Outside, the night air was crisp with approaching winter, stars brilliantly clear in the moonless sky. They walked in silence toward Olivia's house, the sounds of the dance fading behind them. "I'm sorry about that," Yance finally said as they reached her gate. "Blackwell had no right to speak to you that way." "It wasn't your fault," Olivia assured him. "Mr. Blackwell's behavior reflects only on himself, not on you." Yance's jaw worked as if he were struggling with words. What he said about offering you a better life, was he wrong? The question caught Olivia off guard. Of course he was wrong. I have no interest in returning east, especially not with a man like Terrence Blackwell. But you could have more than Silver Creek offers: museums, theaters, libraries, the things you left behind. Olivia stepped closer, placing her hand on his arm. I didn't leave behind anything that matters to me now. My life is here, Yance, my work, my home. She hesitated, then added softly, the people I care about. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. You're sure? I've never been more certain of anything. She smiled up at him, her heart in her eyes. When I stepped off that train, I was alone and afraid, with no idea what my future held. But then you said those words, you've been waiting for me, and somehow, I knew everything would be all right. Yance's expression softened as he took her hands in his. I meant it, you know. From the moment I saw you standing on that platform, looking so brave despite your uncertainty, I felt like my whole life had been leading to that moment. Why didn't you say anything? Olivia asked, all these weeks. At first, it was because of Frederick. You came here to marry him, and I felt it would be dishonorable to pursue his intended bride so soon after his death. He squeezed her hands gently. And then, as we became friends, I was afraid of ruining what we had. You seemed content with your new life, and I didn't want to complicate things. Some complications are worth having, Olivia said softly, the last of Yance's restraint dissolved at her words. He pulled her into his arms, one hand cupping her cheek as his lips found hers in a kiss that was both tender and fierce. Olivia responded with equal fervor, her arms winding around his neck as she surrendered to feelings she had held in check for too long. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Yance rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Olivia Vaughan, he whispered. I think I have since that first day. And I love you, she replied, her voice steady despite the tears of joy threatening to spill from her eyes. Though I was slower to admit it, even to myself. They stood in the moonlight, wrapped in each other's arms, the world around them fading as they exchanged soft words and softer kisses. It was only when the distant church clock struck midnight that they reluctantly parted. I should go, Yance said, though he made no move to release her. People will talk. Olivia laughed softly. People are already talking, if Mrs. Peterson is to be believed. Then I suppose I should give them something worth talking about. He drew her close again, kissing her with a passion that left her dizzy. Good night, my love. I'll see you tomorrow. As she watched him ride away, Olivia touched her lips, still warm from his kiss. She had come to Silver Creek seeking security through marriage to a stranger. Instead, she had found love with a man who saw her truly not as a mail-order bride or an Eastern schoolteacher, but as a woman of strength and courage, worthy of being loved for herself. The following weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Yance courted Olivia properly, with bouquets of late autumn flowers, dinners at the hotel restaurant, and long rides through the countryside. They read poetry by her hearth in the evenings, played chess, which she usually won, and talked endlessly about books, dreams, and their shared future. Terrence Blackwell departed for Chicago without further incident, though the town buzzed for days about the confrontation at the harvest dance. Mrs. Peterson declared it the most exciting thing to happen in Silver Creek since the gold strike of '76, and Mrs. Thomas confided to Olivia that the school board heartily approved of her relationship with the most eligible bachelor in the county. As November gave way to December, snow blanketed the mountains and crept down into the valley. The schoolchildren grew increasingly excited about the approaching Christmas holiday and the annual town celebration. We'll have a Christmas pageant, Olivia told Yance as they sat by her fire one evening. The children will perform the nativity story and will sing carols. Then there's the town tree lighting and the community dinner. Sounds wonderful, Yance said, watching her animated face with evident adoration. What can I do to help? Well, we need a tree for the schoolhouse. Consider it done. I know just the spot on the north ridge where the firs grow straight and full. Olivia smiled, leaning against his shoulder. What are your Christmas traditions at the ranch? Yance was quiet for a moment, his arm tightening around her. Frederick and I usually had Mrs. Beecham cook a special dinner. We'd exchange gifts, maybe play a game of chess, nothing elaborate. The simplicity of his description touched Olivia's heart. Despite his success, Yance's life had been largely defined by work and responsibility, with little room for celebration. "This year will be different," she promised. "This year, you'll have a proper Christmas." The days leading up to Christmas were filled with preparations. Olivia rehearsed the children for the pageant, baked cookies for the community dinner, and decorated her small house with pine boughs and red ribbon. Yance delivered the promised tree to the schoolhouse, a magnificent 8-foot fir that filled the room with its fresh scent, and helped hang paper chains and painted pine cones created by the students on Christmas Eve. The town gathered at the school for the pageant. Children in homemade costumes enacted the nativity story, their faces solemn with the importance of their roles. Afterward, everyone moved to the town square where a massive tree awaited lighting. Reverend Thomas led the crowd in carols as the tree was illuminated with hundreds of candles, their warm glow reflecting off the snow. Olivia stood beside Yance, her gloved hand tucked in his, her heart full as she sang Silent Night with the community that had become her family. The community dinner followed, tables groaning under the weight of roast turkeys, hams, pies, and cakes contributed by every household. Olivia and Yance sat with the school board members, discussing plans for expanding the school building in the spring. As the evening wound down, Yance drew Olivia aside. "Would you mind coming to the ranch tomorrow for Christmas dinner? Mrs. Beecham has been cooking for days, and she'd be heartbroken if you didn't join us." "I'd love to," Olivia replied, "but first, I have something for you at my house." A Christmas gift. They slipped away from the celebration, walking through the quiet streets toward Olivia's home. Snow had begun to fall again, large flakes drifting lazily in the light of the street lamps, coating their shoulders and catching in Olivia's hair. Inside her house, a small fir tree stood in the corner of the front room, decorated with paper stars and candles. Beneath it lay several wrapped packages, one larger than the rest. "Sit down," Olivia instructed, gesturing to the armchair by the fire. When Yance complied, looking both curious and amused, she retrieved the large package and placed it in his hands. "Merry Christmas, Yance," she said softly. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a hand-knitted afghan in rich browns and blues. "Did you make this?" he asked, running his hand over the soft wool. Olivia nodded. "I've been working on it every evening after you left. Mrs. Peterson helped with the pattern." "It's beautiful," he said, genuine appreciation in his voice. "Thank you." "There's something else," Olivia said, suddenly nervous. From beneath the tree, she retrieved a small leather-bound book. "I found this among Frederick's things. I think he meant for you to have it." Yance took the book, opening it to discover a journal written in Frederick's neat hand. As he read the first page, his eyes widened. "These are his recipes for cattle breeding," he said, his voice hushed with amazement. "His methods for selecting bloodlines, his notes on grazing rotations. I knew he kept records, but he never showed them to me." "There's a letter," Olivia said, pointing to an envelope tucked into the back cover. Yance extracted it with careful fingers, unfolding the single sheet inside. As he read, tears gathered in his eyes, one escaping to trail down his cheek. "What does it say?" Olivia asked gently. Yance cleared his throat. "It says, to my partner and friend Yance, you've been more than a business associate, you've been the son I never had. This book contains everything I know about ranching, but you already know the most important thing. A man's worth isn't measured by his holdings, but by his honor and the love he gives freely to others. Be happy, my boy. You deserve it." The simple words, written by a man who had clearly loved Yance deeply, moved Olivia to tears. She knelt beside Yance's chair, taking his hand in hers. "He was right," she said softly. "About your worth, about what matters." Yance set the book aside and pulled Olivia into his arms, holding her tightly as if she were a lifeline in a storm of emotion. When he finally released her, his blue eyes were clear and determined. "I have something for you two," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I was going to wait until tomorrow, but now seems right." He withdrew a small velvet box, and Olivia's heart began to race. Sliding from the chair to kneel before her, Yance took her hands in his. "Olivia Vaughan," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. When you stepped off that train 3 months ago, you changed my life. You brought light and laughter and love into a world that had grown too solitary, too focused on work and duty. You've shown me what it means to truly live, not just exist." He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "I love you more than I knew it was possible to love another person. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears of joy spilled down Olivia's cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. When she finally found her voice, it was barely above a whisper. "Yes, Yance, yes, with all my heart." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that held all the promise of their future together, passionate, tender, and filled with unwavering commitment. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "When?" he asked simply. "As soon as possible," Olivia replied, surprising herself with her certainty. "I don't want to wait. New Year's Day," Yance suggested, "a new beginning for both of us." And so it was that on the first day of 1886, Olivia Vaughan became Mrs. Yance O'Malley in a ceremony attended by the entire population of Silver Creek. Snow fell gently outside the church windows as they exchanged vows, Olivia radiant in a cream silk dress, Yance handsome and solemn in a new black suit. At the reception held in the town hall, Mrs. Peterson wept unabashedly, declaring it the most romantic thing she had ever witnessed. Mrs. Thomas congratulated them with genuine warmth, and Mrs. Beecham presented them with a wedding cake decorated with sugared violets. As the celebration continued around them, Yance led Olivia outside for a moment of privacy. In the quiet winter twilight, he drew her into his arms, his eyes reflecting the same joy that filled her heart. "Happy?" he asked softly. "Completely," she assured him, reaching up to touch his face. "I came here seeking security, a practical arrangement with a stranger. Instead, I found you a man who sees me as I truly am, who loves me not despite my strength but because of it. And I found a woman who reminds me daily that life is about more than work and duty," Yance replied, his voice rough with emotion. "A woman who makes me want to be worthy of her love. You already are," Olivia whispered, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. They returned to the reception hand in hand, moving among their friends and neighbors as husband and wife. Later, they departed for the ranch in a sleigh decorated with ribbons and bells, the townspeople cheering and throwing rice as they glided away into the snowy night. At the ranch, Yance carried Olivia across the threshold of the house that would now be their shared home. A fire burned welcomingly in the hearth, and vases of hothouse flowers purchased at great expense from Helena brightened every room. "Welcome home, Mrs. O'Malley," Yance said, setting her gently on her feet. "It's perfect," Olivia replied, looking around at what had once been a bachelor's dwelling and would now be their family home. The afghan she had knitted for Yance was draped across the back of the settee, and her books already filled a new shelf he had built beside his own. Later, as they lay entwined in the large bed that had replaced Yance's narrow bachelor's cot, Olivia marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had traveled west as a mail-order bride, stepping off the train alone and uncertain. Instead of the marriage of convenience she had anticipated, she had found a love deeper and truer than anything she could have imagined. "What are you thinking?" Yance asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I was thinking about that day at the train station," she replied. "When you said I had been waiting for you," Yance smiled, pulling her closer. "I meant it then, and I mean it now. We were meant to find each other, Olivia. Some things are just written in the stars." As she drifted towards sleep in the arms of her husband, Olivia couldn't help but agree. Some things were indeed meant to be, even when they arrived in ways you never expected, on trains bound for distant horizons and futures yet unwritten. 5 years later, Olivia stood on the front porch of the ranch house, watching as Yance lifted their 4-year-old daughter onto her first pony. Elizabeth, named for Olivia's mother, squealed with delight as her father led the gentle mare around the corral, her dark curls bouncing with each step. Their 2-year-old son, Frederick, named for the man who had brought them together, dozed in Olivia's arms, his chubby cheek pressed against her shoulder. The baby growing beneath her heart, due in the spring, shifted restlessly, already as active as its siblings. The Silver Creek Ranch had prospered under Yance's guidance. Following Frederick's breeding recipes, he had developed a herd renowned throughout Montana Territory for its quality. The addition of Olivia's organizational skills and head for business had transformed the operation from successful to exceptional. She still taught at the school 3 days a week, sharing the position with a young woman who had arrived from Minnesota the previous year. The arrangement allowed Olivia to balance her passion for education with her love for ranch life and her growing family. As she watched Yance with their daughter, his face alight with the same tender joy she had first glimpsed on a dusty train platform 5 years earlier, Olivia felt a wave of gratitude for the twist of fate that had brought her to this place and this man. She had stepped off the train alone, a mail-order bride seeking security in a practical arrangement. Instead, she had found a love that sustained and challenged her, a partner who valued her strength as well as her tenderness, and a life richer and more fulfilling than anything she could have imagined in her Boston drawing room. "Mama, look, I'm riding," Elizabeth called, waving with one hand while the other clutched the saddle horn. "I see you, sweetheart. You're doing wonderfully," Olivia called back, her heart swelling with pride. Yance glanced up, catching her eye across the yard. The love in his gaze was as powerful as it had been on their wedding day, perhaps even stronger for the years and experiences they had shared. Later, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple, Yance's arm around her shoulders and Frederick sleeping in his lap, Olivia leaned against her husband's solid warmth. "Happy?" he asked, echoing the question he had asked on their wedding day. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she replied truthfully. "And you?" Yance pressed a kiss to her temple. "I have everything a man could want: a thriving ranch, healthy children, and a wife who still takes my breath away. What more could I ask for?" As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Olivia reflected on the journey that had led her to this moment. She had come west seeking a new beginning and had found not just a home, but a love story worthy of the most romantic novel. The mail-order bride who stepped off the train alone had indeed been waiting for the cowboy who claimed her heart. And in that waiting, in that moment of courage when she had traveled into the unknown, she had found her truest self and her greatest happiness. "I love you, Yance O'Malley," she whispered as the first stars appeared above the mountains they both cherished. "And I love you, Olivia O'Malley," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Today, tomorrow, and for all the days we're granted together." In the gathering dusk, their lips met in a kiss that held all the passion of new love and all the comfort of a love tested and proven through the seasons of their lives together, a love born when a mail-order bride stepped off a train and a cowboy said the words that would change both their lives forever. "You've been waiting for me."